Getting most of the communion online, all right? So I feel like you stay here all the time, but he's doing.
As we've been journeying through this Easter season, I keep thinking back to the first week after Easter. That first week after Easter was quite a roller coaster. You might remember that on Easter Sunday, Reverend Dorlamar spoke to us about resurrection not as one person saved, but as a whole people lifted. Resurrection as communal rising. We had just come through Holy Week together, which started on Palm Sunday when we sang chants from the streets of Minneapolis where people were resisting ICE. And one of those chants became the guiding words of this Easter worship series that we are in. No one is getting left behind this time. No one is getting left behind. No one is getting left behind this time. We get there together or never get there at all. We get there together or never get there at all. We get there together or never get there at all. The words of that chant felt powerful and almost true. But if I'm honest, I was struggling with it. The chant felt slightly naive. Is it really possible for all of us to get there together? So all of this was swirling around in my mind and my spirit that first week of Easter. And then on Easter Monday, I stumbled across a clip of the Artemis II mission where NASA had just sent 4 astronauts to the moon. Disclaimer, we're going to nerd out a little on astronaut things today. And when I heard the impromptu Easter message given by astronaut Victor Glover from space, I was hooked. Here's what he said.
Apollo 8 had a memorable Christmas Eve reading from Genesis. Do you have a message you'd like to share from space about Easter Sunday?
You know, I don't have anything prepared. I'm glad you brought that up, though. I think these observances are important, and as we are so far from Earth and looking back at, the beauty of creation, I think for me, one of the really important personal perspectives that I have up here is I can really see Earth as one thing. And, when I read the Bible and I look at all of the amazing things that were done for us who were created, it's you have this amazing place, this spaceship. You guys are talking to us because we're in a spaceship really far from Earth, but you're on a spaceship called Earth that was created to give us a place to live in the universe, in the cosmos. I think maybe the distance we are from you makes you think what we're doing is special, but we're the same distance from you, and I'm trying to tell you, just trust me, you are special. In all of this emptiness, this is a whole bunch of nothing, this thing we call the universe. You have this oasis, this beautiful place that we get to exist together. I think as we go into Easter Sunday, thinking about, all the cultures all around the world, whether you celebrate it or not, whether you believe in God or not, this is an opportunity for us to remember where we are, who we are, and that we are the same thing, and that we got to get through this together.
Did you hear his last words? We've got to get through this together. Something about Victor's words made the chant make a little more sense to me. We are indeed in this thing together, hurtling through space on this spaceship called Earth. An astronaut came to the same conclusions as protesters in Minneapolis. We get there together, or we never get there at all. So I was feeling pretty good on Monday of Easter week, and then Tuesday came. And we woke up to the news that our president had written a chilling social media post. Quote, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will," unquote. And my heart sank, and my gut churned. The president of my country was threatening to commit genocide against the people of Iran. And not a lot of people around the world were saying much about that. So now that chant was on rocky ground again in my spirit. But this time with a sharper clarity. Can we really get there together with tyrants? Can we really get there together with people who commit crimes against humanity? I was not sure I could say yes to that. So like I said, the week after Easter was a roller coaster. And then I started working on this sermon. I read the passage from Acts that we heard a moment ago. And I remembered that just a few years earlier, Paul was a tyrant. Not our Paul, although I've only known Paul for 15 plus years. But I'm talking about the Paul whose letters now make up a big chunk of our New Testament. That Paul. That Paul was a tyrant. Paul was known as Saul at the time, and Saul was cruel and relentless. Saul was dragging followers of Jesus to their deaths, actively, intentionally, destroying people's bodies and lives. But then, on a road to Damascus, the risen Christ appeared to the tyrant. A blinding light, a voice, and a question. Why are you persecuting me? Jesus didn't come to the tyrant with a word of condemnation. He came with a question. And the way I hear that question, it was vulnerable, even intimate, and filled with sorrow. And in a single moment, the one who was hell-bent on destroying others felt the overwhelming love of God. Saul was changed. He gained a wider perspective, and he repented, and he started to follow the way of Jesus. This Easter season, we've talked about some of the people who Jesus appeared to after the resurrection. You might remember we learned that Jesus first appeared to the women, the ones who were marginalized in that society. And Kay pointed out to us in his sermon a few weeks ago on the road to Emmaus that Jesus appeared to the nobodies on the way to nowhere. And now, on the road to Damascus, the risen Christ appears to the tyrant. No one is getting left behind this time. Not the marginalized, not the nobodies, not even the tyrants. And so it is Paul, the former tyrant, who proclaims in Athens, "In God we live and move and have our being." And I think that Paul knew this truth not just in his head, he knew it in his body. Because love had come for Paul when he was at his most distorted and most cruel self. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. In the realm of God, no one is getting left behind. We get there together or we never get there at all. So with that disclaimer about Paul, I'll also say that he was in a very different moment of his life journey when he spoke these words in Acts. After that life-altering experience with the living God, Paul started to follow the way of Jesus. But this path cost him dearly. When he spoke these words, Paul had been beaten, physically abused for following the way of Jesus. He had been chased out of cities for trying to share the overwhelming news that we live and move and have our being in love. When he spoke those words in Athens, Paul was all alone, waiting for friends who had not yet arrived. And in spite of the very real suffering that he faced, Paul kept going. He stayed present to the calling. The wider view did not rescue Paul from the heartbreak of his own journey. But I think his experience on the road to Damascus had given him something to hold on to. I can relate to that. I moved to New York City in 2008. And like Paul in Athens, I arrived carrying both wounds and a calling. I carried wounds from psychological and emotional and physical harm. I had been hurt by power games and abuse and sexual harassment. I arrived in New York City with wounds that I had not really faced, that I didn't really have the time or the support to face. But I also arrived with a calling to build a life in music, to rise instead of collapsing, to offer my gifts in piano performance and teaching and building community to this city. I hustled that first summer of 2008 to start the Mimesis Ensemble, dedicated to performing contemporary classical music. I walked around until my feet hurt, putting up flyers to find piano students. And I organized the first year of concerts for my new ensemble. It was hard, but it was exciting. And then, following that summer of laying the foundations, the economic crash in the fall of 2008 wiped them out. And my first year in New York City as a freelance musician quickly became precarious. But I kept going. There were glorious highs, but there were also terrible lows. By the time I found my way to Church of the Village in 2012, I was beyond exhausted. I was profoundly depleted. I was running on fumes. I was hurt. I was depressed. I was proud of the life I had built, but I was not sure I could keep going with so little support. Church of the Village became a place where I could just be Katie, a place where I didn't have to perform, a place where I did not have to prove my worth. And I was glad for that oasis, but I was uncomfortable with it, because it almost felt selfish to put myself in a place that could love me. But on the other hand, I was too tired and too hurt to keep on going without it. I gradually found friends and mentors and support, and slowly I gained enough strength to face some of the heavy wounds I had carried from earlier years. Somewhere in that process of healing, I came across a quote from Julian of Norwich, a Christian mystic from the 14th century. She said, "All shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." When I first heard that quote, I hated it. I remember having a visceral reaction in my whole body. Everything in me revolted against the idea that all would be well, because things had not been well for so long. And this quote felt like a lie dressed up as faith. But just recently, I encountered the rest of that quote. All shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well, for there is a force of love moving through the universe that holds us fast and will never let us go. I remember the emotion that welled up in me when I read that. That was something I knew to be deeply true. Through the many years of my life, when I was running from one wound into the next, there was a force of love that never let me go. I can see it clearly today. But even in the midst of the pain I went through, there was always a small thread I could hold on to. That was God. And God never let me go. Julian of Norwich was never denying the truth of pain. She had lived through a pandemic that wiped out half of Europe's population. When she said, "All shall be well," she was not denying the reality of suffering. She was completely sure of a wider view. There is a force of love moving through the universe that holds us fast and will not let us go. And now back to the astronauts, because I'm still a little obsessed with them. After Artemis II successfully went to the moon and back, the astronauts shared their first public comments in an emotional address. Here is an excerpt from Christina Koch.
A crew is people, or, a group that is in it all the time, no matter what, that is stroking together every minute with the same purpose, that is willing to sacrifice silently for each other, that gives grace, that holds accountable. A crew has the same cares and the same needs, and a crew is inescapably, beautifully, dutifully linked. So when we saw Tiny Earth, people asked our crew what impressions we had. And honestly, what struck me wasn't necessarily just Earth, it was all the blackness around it. Earth was just this lifeboat hanging undisturbingly in the universe. Uh-oh. So I may have not learned, I know I haven't learned, everything that this journey has yet to teach me. But there's one new thing I know, and that is, planet Earth, you are a crew. Yeah. Thank you.
My dear friends of planet Earth, we are a crew. We are in this together. We belong to each other. We belong to this earth. We belong to God. We live and move and have our being in an ancient love that will not let us go. And so the next time you feel yourself falling into depression or despair, find the small thread that you can always hold on to, and allow that thread to lead you to the wider view, the view that Paul knew in Acts, the view that the astronauts knew when they saw the Earth from the moon. Love holds us and will not let us go. The wider view is that we are inescapably and beautifully bound up together, and that none of us is getting left behind. That chant was never naive. It was always cosmology. It was always theology. It was always good news for the marginalized and the nobodies and the tyrants of the world. Thanks be to God.